The three of them grew up in the same crumbling red brick complex on the eastern edge of Buffalo, where the wind off Lake Erie never quite let the snow melt clean, and the air always carried the smell of hot wings, gasoline, and wet concrete. Everyone called the place the Bricks, and nobody ever really left. Max was the older brother by 23 months, born quiet. From the time he could hold a crayon he was drawing. Alley cats on the backs of eviction notices, skylines on pizza boxes, portraits of strangers on the subway when he finally saved enough for a monthly pass. He wore the same gray hoodie until the sleeves frayed into strings and kept dead headphones around his neck like a talisman. Teachers said he had talent. He only heard the part where they said wasted potential. He wanted Pratt RISD anywhere that wasn't here. He wanted to paint the city until it stopped looking like it was dying. Dylan came out screaming and never lowered the volume. Track medals, detention slips, a laugh that could fill a hallway. He could sell ice to a blizzard and talk his way out of anything except, maybe, himself. Girls wrote their numbers on the inside of his Letterman jacket in Sharpie. He lost half of them before he made it home. He loved Max, sure, but quietly envied the way people looked at his brother like he was already somewhere else. Sophie lived one floor down, apartment 2B. Auburn hair that caught rust-colored light, freckles like someone had flicked a paintbrush at her face. Voice scraped raw from Marlboro Reds, she bummed behind the 7-Eleven. She could knock the wind out of you with a hug or with a fist, depending on the day. She and Max started going steady junior year after he draped his soaked hoodie over her head in a downpour and said nothing, just smiled like an idiot while the rain drummed on the cotton. Dylan watched from the stoop, blew a bubble with his gum, and thought, whatever, not my problem. For years they were a single moving organism. 3 bodies, 1 heartbeat. 3 crammed into Max's rust-flaked Civic with the windows down and Taking Back Sunday turned up loud enough to rattle teeth. 3 on the hood of that same car at 2 a.m. Passing a single warm beer and watching heat lightning flicker over the Canadian shore. 3 skipping stones at Woodlawn Beach until the sky bruised purple. Max sketching the horizon in quick and fierce. Sophie asleep against his shoulder. Dylan trying for a record 11 bounces and cursing joyfully every time he hit 9. Felt unbreakable. Then came the text. Sophie let herself into Max's place the way she always had. Key still on the same cracked keyring he'd given her in 10th grade. He was in the shower. Steam curled out from under the bathroom door like cigarette smoke. His phone buzzed on the kitchen table. Lily Redheart. You were amazing tonight, Heartsuit. Thank you for letting me help picking it out. She's gonna lose her mind. Lily. Sophie's best friend since finger paint and scraped knees. Lily, who had danced with Max at that house party 2 weeks earlier while Sophie was in the bathroom throwing up cheap vodka. Lily, whose hands had lingered on Max's chest, whose laugh had pressed against his ear. Sophie's stomach turned to liquid fire. She opened the thread, scrolled, saw the words surprise for our anniversary. The ring. The Lily knows her taste better than I do. But all her brain registered were the heart emojis and the word amazing glowing like a brand. Max stepped out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, hair dripping, that soft crooked smile he saved just for her. She didn't wait for explanations. You sleeping with Lily? He blinked. Soph. The phone hit him square in the chest and clattered to the linoleum. She was gone before it stopped spinning. He called 127 times that night, sat on her welcome mat in the snow until his fingers turned blue, left voicemails that started calm and ended in cracks. She listened to none of them. 3 nights later she texted Dylan. Need to get out of my skin. Pick me up. They ended up in his Jeep at the edge of the lake, heater broken, November wind slicing through the cracked window seals. He bought a 5th of Jack from a guy who didn't card. They drank until the bottle sweated and their breath fogged the glass. She told him everything, voice shaking with rage and whiskey. Dylan listened the way he listened to coaches, nodding, jaw tight, eyes on the black water. When she finished he said only, "He's my brother, Soph." And it sounded like an apology and a warning at the same time. She leaned across the console and kissed him like she was trying to start a fire with friction. He tasted like copper and wintergreen gum and bad decisions. They crawled into the back seat, clumsy and furious. Windows steamed opaque. Lincoln Park screamed from tinny speakers. She bit his shoulder hard enough to leave teeth marks. He hissed her name like a prayer and a curse. When it was over they lay tangled and shivering, staring at the frost patterns on the roof. Morning tasted like ash. She took the photo anyway. Both of them naked, his arm heavy across her ribs, her hair fanned over his chest like spilled paint. She sent it to Max with a single line. "We're even now. Love, Sophie." Blue check. Seen. No reply. Max vanished. For 72 hours no one knew where he was. His phone went straight to voicemail. Dylan drove every street in the city twice. Their mother chain smoked on the balcony and prayed to saints she hadn't believed in since childhood. On the fourth day, Dylan found the Civic parked crooked at Erie Basin Marina. Driver's door yawning open, keys dangling by one hinge in the wind. Keys still in the ignition. On the passenger seat, Max's sketchbook, open to a half-finished portrait of Sophie laughing on the hood of that same car. Sunlight in her hair. Underneath, in his careful block letters, "I didn't get to tell her." They dragged the lake for 6 hours. Found him 2 miles downstream, caught in commercial fishing nets, skin marbled blue-white, eyes wide open like he'd been surprised by the cold. In his jacket pocket, a small velvet box. Inside, a thin white gold ring with a single emerald the exact shade of her eyes the day she said yes to being his girlfriend under the bleachers. No alcohol, no drugs, just lake water in his lungs and a note saved in his phone drafts. "I never touched Lily. I only wanted the moment to be perfect. I'm sorry I wasn't enough." The funeral was small and brutal. Their mother collapsed against Dylan and screamed until her voice shredded. Sophie stood at the back in the same coat she'd worn the night everything broke, hands buried deep in pockets so no one would see them shake. She didn't cry. She couldn't. It felt like if she started she would never stop, and the lake would rise up and swallow the cemetery too. A week later she and Dylan moved in together. No discussion, no plan, just inertia and guilt thick as tar. He cooked eggs she didn't eat. She washed clothes that still smelled like Max's cologne clinging to Dylan's skin. They slept back to back in the same bed, a canyon of mattress between them. Every night she dreamed the same dream. Max standing waist-deep in black water, arms reaching, mouth forming her name without sound. 33 days in, Dylan came home drunk and crying. He sat on the kitchen floor and said, "I see him every time I blink. I see him walking in. We killed him, sophomore. We killed him." He packed her things into 2 garbage bags, set them by the door like trash, called her an Uber, and closed the door without looking back. She went home to her mother's apartment. The prom photo was still magnet to the fridge. Max on her left, Dylan on her right, all 3 of them 16 and immortal. She stared at it until her eyes burned, then took the kitchen scissors and cut herself out of the picture with slow, deliberate snips. Left only the brothers, arms slung around empty space. 3 years slid by like dirty ice. Every Sunday morning Sophie drives to the breakwall where they found him. Same route, same cracked coffee cup from the diner on hurdle, 2 sugars, no cream. She sets the cup on the concrete, sits cross-legged in the wind, and talks to the water the way other people talk to gravestones. Some mornings she whispers, "I was so sure you lied. I wanted you to hurt the way I hurt. I didn't know hurting you would end everything." Some mornings she screams until her throat bleeds, "Why didn't you fight for us? Why'd you just let the lake take you?" Most mornings she just sits in silence until the coffee goes cold and the gulls fight over the lid. Last April the water was still half frozen. She waded in anyway, boots and all, until the cold knifed her lungs and her legs went numb. She thought, if I keep going, will you finally forgive me? Something, terror, punishment, the last scrap of self-preservation, dragged her back to shore gasping. The next week someone had spray-painted the concrete beside her spot in Max's unmistakable style. Sharp angles, perfect negative space. One word, tall black letters, live. She doesn't know who did it. Sometimes she thinks the wind carried the can. Sometimes she thinks he reached up through 6 feet of water and lake-bottom mud just to write it. She still comes every Sunday, still brings the coffee, still ends every visit the same way, voice raw from salt and sorrow. I'm trying, Max. I swear I'm trying. I'm sorry it's taking so long. The lake keeps moving. It never answers. And that silence is the worst part of all.